तो शिव और अंबिका भाई बहन थे, उसके बाद फिर वो वाइफ का है.
We have to be very careful about these things. I was hesitating in mentioning it. Oldest living civilization, if we are talking about, those are hardly 5 or 6. China is one, India is another. We have a continuity.
And why did we worship fertility? Like, is that because we were a matriarchal society at some point of time?
So the great Mughal Jahangir built a tower in its remembrance, spending lakhs of rupees. Was his favorite. When Jahangir was building tower in remembrance of his Ghazal, Britishers were building Oxford University.
Today's podcast rings the bells of our lost, silent history. The trident of Navratri, with today being goddess Katyayani. She becoming a reason to fathom the way we have come as Indians, from the Mohenjo-daro to the Mughal atrocities. Tales of blood used as ink by the invaders of our kind. Stories so unheard of and so unforgiving that not hearing them today would be nothing less than a crime. Today's Antaraag is a blast to the past, a journey to our ancestors who were outcast, the survival of tradition and the records of lost time. This Navratri, Katyayani, is here on this beautiful night. Enjoy. So, I want to start with the first question, which has been a common question throughout all the podcast. What is Navratri and why do we celebrate it?
So, I'll call you Bharat. All right.
Yeah.
You don't mind. Navratri, as the name suggests, refers to, it's a Sanyuktakshar, consists
Okay,
of
sir.
9 and Ratri. So, it essentially refers to the 9 nights, the 9 Ratris. But these are not ordinary 9 Ratris, obviously. And now, originally, when it all started, and it all started, I should say, nearly at the time of birth of Christ. So, at that time it was known as Durgotsav. So, Utsav of Durga. Now, Durga, as we all know, is representative of Shakti. And in Sanatan Dharma, I prefer to use Sanatan Dharma rather than Hinduism for the obvious reason that there are too many things going, and Sanatan Dharma is more appropriate word. As a matter of fact, all my books, in all my books that I have written or articles, I've always liked to use Sanatan Dharma because that is more relevant.
In what sense? Like, in what way is it more relevant than Hinduism?
We'll do a bit of digression, but I think it's very important. The thing is that when we talk of Hinduism is used more in the sense of a religion, whether in India or abroad, whether when we are filling a bureaucratic form or when we are being questioned under oath. What's your religion? We say Hinduism. You'll rarely hear someone say, I'm Sanatan Dharmi. And yet, the word Hindu itself was first used by that Persian king Darius in about 400 years BC. Before that, this word was never used really. This word was never in existence. So it has actually been institutionalized by Britishers when they were doing census. But that was very recently. When I say very recently, I'm talking about 19th century. You know, when they started doing the first census, they had to classify people according to their religion. And Christians, when they asked them, what's your religion? They could rightly say, we are Christians. And if they asked a Muslim, he could rightly say he's a Muslim. But there was nothing like Hinduism. Because either you were Shaivite or you were a Vaishnav or you were a Shakta or 1,000 other such ideologies. Please understand. And this is a very important thing which we keep missing out. So here is a civilization which dates back, at least we have proof of that, to Indus Valley. And if you go there, in the Indus Valley civilization, the more and more findings in Rakhi Gari by Dr. Shinde and others, as they are revealing, we find phallic symbol-like things. We also find rings which resemble, pardon me, a vulva. Now, obviously, those people were worshipping phallic symbols, vulva, which was very common in all ancient civilizations. Fertility worship is not something new in India. Fertility worship, as you must be knowing, Bharat, is common to all the old civilizations that we know of. And of the old civilizations, of the old 9 civilizations, let's say only 6 are living civilizations. And India is one of them.
And which are those 6?
One of them is, of course, Jewish civilization. One is Chinese civilization. One is Indian civilization. One very strangely we call Western civilization and not Christian civilization. So, but the point here is different. The point, Egyptian civilization. The point I'm trying to make is oldest living civilization, if we are talking about, those are hardly 5 or 6. China is one, India is another. We have a continuity.
And why did we worship fertility? Like, is that because we were a matriarchal society at some point of time?
There could have been many reasons. Of course, you know, anthropologists and social scientists can only guess. because it is not written anywhere why different society, why Mayan in Mayan culture there were fertility rites, but it is very obvious that fertility was very important. To grow in numbers was considered very important because that is what gave you protection. When you are not even the form of a tribe, you will look for security in numbers. Even now, we look for security in numbers. So that is number one. And second, which I have discussed with few social scientists abroad, and I was testing my view. I, I am hardly a scholar in that sense. Uh, I do it out of my sheer love for the subject. But the fact is that in most tribals, the tribes would want the size of the tribe to grow so that they could face the other tribe. They could tackle the fury of nature. They wanted more hands. So numbers was always very important. Now, given this, it is not surprising that there was worship of phallic symbol or fertility rites were there in almost without exception all civilizations. Now, in Indus Valley civilizations, we have found many such articles which confirm this. Now, when we talk of roughly speaking Hinduism, but actually Sanatan Dharma, we are talking of a civilization which dates back at least to Mohenjo-daro, Harappa, Rakhigarhi, etc. Now, the latest research is telling us that this civilization goes back 3 to 4,000 before Christ.
Oh, okay. What is the research on that?
Research is, you see, science is such a beautiful thing. So now we are able to do carbon dating with much greater accuracy. Number one. Number two, we are able to do exploration and excavation using modern scientific tools like underground radar and other things without damaging or without touching with hand those objects. You see, the problem arises if you touch any of those things, then you leave your own fingerprint there. You're introducing a new DNA. You're introducing sweat and so many other things there. So when you are trying to study those things, you have already contaminated those items which you have collected. Now, all this was not known. I mean, it was not known, you'll be surprised, till 100 years back. Mohenjo-daro's discovery is hardly 100-year-old. I hope you know that interesting story, how it was discovered. I mean, those two brothers who were given the task of laying down the railway line to Multan from Lahore, and they wanted the ballast for the railway track. You know, for railway track, you need to put ballast so that railway track doesn't move. And where do they get it? So the villagers who were hired as workmen, they found a mound and they went and dug it up and they found some bricks. And they started breaking those bricks and they started using it as ballast. Those Multani, Sindhi villagers who had never seen train, because no one in India had seen train till then, they are working as laborers. They are being asked to do the railway track work, digging, फावड़ा लेके, कुदाली लेकर के. What do? It's amazing how these things have happened.
I have a question there. I always had this question that, um, let me summarize it. We have, on one side, in terms of Puranas and Mahabharat, for example, as texts, we have such a unfathomable is a word, yeah, unfathomable sort of a history of, in terms of the arrows, how they had fire coming out, or all the concepts written down, like in terms of the magical things that are explained. And then cut to Mohenjo-daro, right? In between, we also know about Pai language and Buddha, and that's the only interval in between. And then cut to Mohenjo-daro, and from Mohenjo-daro now we are talking about the British era, where nobody knows anything about Mohenjo-daro also. How can a civilization become like this? How can we forget so much, or have we forgotten, or have we made up our history? What is the thing going on?
Oh, this is very interesting. It's fascinating. I'm surprised you asked this question. Not many people, uh, uh, when we are talking, they ask me this question. But anyway, so the thing is this. In case of India, I'm talking about right now, particularly, when a civilization flourishes, and flourishes not only at one spot. Now, as we know, not only Mohenjo-daro or Harappa, which I think is 90 nautical miles away or whatever. I don't remember the figure exactly. So forget about just Mohenjo-daro and Harappa. Now we have found Lothal, Rakhi Gyurguri. We are finding a series of these ancient cities starting from Sindh, going right into Gujarat, Kutch, and now Haryana. So obviously there was a civilization which was flourishing. Now it was highly advanced. It's obvious. You look at the size of the bricks. Each brick has same ratio of length is to breadth. Bharat, we are talking about 5,000 years back. I'm sorry, 6,000 years back. 6,000 years back, there are people who want to make their housing, and they think it is better to use bricks using mold which are exactly of the same size.
Okay.
Not only that, every street bisects at 90 degrees. Every drain is covered. That is more than what I can say about today's Bombay. Every single drain. The two-storied houses, and because I'm an engineer, this interests me especially, and I'm planning to go to the latest site, Rakhi Gadi, and have a talk with Dr. Shinde sometimes about it. You are building two-storied houses using brick structure and having a bathroom on the first floor with a drain running perfectly vertically, as if it has been, there is no way it could have been made except using a plumb, which is a modern tool, bringing, building walls of the house which are exactly at 90 degree, which are absolutely straight. You drop a plumb ball and it'll go straight. The thread will be along the wall. Not a minor thing. All right. So what I'm saying, such people, you have to call them highly civilized.
Is there electricity possible that time? I mean, any
Of course not. Of course not. But the thing is, I'm quite convinced that the things develop only uh, in a linear manner most of the time. So, uh, and that is why in science, as you have seen, when the development takes place, it used to be first that phone call, and we used to dial the number, and then it became digital phone, and then it became a mobile phone, etc., etc. So, yeah, science has its own logic. But I'm talking about civilization because this is what you and I are discussing.
right, right.
So we are talking about people who were highly evolved. They were not uncivilized people who were using their nail and teeth to tear the skin of an animal and eat raw meat. They were not that type. They had already evolved. The very fact that they had built a colony, a township, means they were no more hunter gatherers. They were not walking in jungle from morning to night collecting some fallen fruits to survive. They had already learned the art of living in safety and comfort, of pakka dwellings, but which means they had food security. They had mastered the art of agriculture. And not only mastered the art of agriculture, they were producing enough and more so that they could live at one place. And if there was a bad time, they could still have from their stocks enough food, right? So these things go without saying. So the moment you talk of township, you start seeing this. This is how human civilization evolves. You know, from hunter gatherers, then pastoralists, and then eventually people learn that it is better to stay at one place if you can grow something there, because then you have to wait for whatever crop it is to grow and harvest it. And this is how human civilization has grown around the world. But it had happened in India 6,000 years back. And they had built beautiful houses. And they had built boundaries. What is most surprising, very few, if any, weapons have been found. So, which means they were not aggressive people. They didn't believe in attacking the next door township. They were essentially peace loving, if I may use the strong word, supine people. That is our civilization. Unfortunately, in the script, we have not been able to decipher so far. But once we do, we'll know. God knows how many things we'll know. But important thing here is If Indus Valley civilization, if those guys, laborers, had not dug up that mound for the bricks, the Britishers as a ruler, and before them, the Mughals as the rulers, and before them, Guptas and others, Indians as the rulers, would not have even known the richness of the past of this land. I hope I'm able to make the point.
Yeah. And that is why it's called.
That happened accidentally. It happened quite accidentally. No wonder Britishers used to treat this as area of darkness. What was there for them to think otherwise? Thousands of miles of a country where people relied only on agriculture. In the name of technology, there was nothing. That is how they 5,000 of Clive's men could defeat an army of 20,000 people in India because of technology, because of education, because of knowledge. The fact is, it's a matter of shame. But even matters of shame, we should, or any race should be able to discuss. Very objectively. If it has self-confidence, it should be able to discuss it. We should not shy away from what has gone wrong in the past. At least I believe in that.
But is it also true that we were very powerful at one point of time? We were called the Golden Bird. And then these Britishers came in and they broke our educational system. And then slowly they won us over.
We will come to that. If you want, we'll come to that. If just now I digress there, too far many points away from what we are discussing. But the important thing here is Britishers were justified in treating most of India culturally, technologically, and education-wise as an area of darkness. We had nothing to show. When Jahangir, his favorite gazelle, Hiran, जो उसका फेवरेट हिरन था, जब वो मर गया, so the great Mughal Jahangir built a tower in its remembrance, spending lakhs of rupees. It was his favorite. When Jahangir was building tower in remembrance of his gazelle, Britishers were building Oxford University.
Oh, and that is the answer to that question also.
10th, 11th century, Britishers were spending their money in building a university. So yes, the GDP of India under Mughals was highest. But what use we were putting our money to? when Sir Thomas Roe came to India, and went to the court of the great Mughal, and he showed him two items. One was the glasses, which were recent development in UK. And the second one was Durbin. You know what Durbin is? Telescope.
Yeah, telescope.
And of course, the emperor looked at it just as a child looks at a toy. Yes, yes, very good. Oh, things look big. He's using the glasses. It never occurred to him that it gives new eyes. He discarded both. This is recorded history. So you are right when you say, is it a fact that you were very rich? Yes, we were very rich. We were very, very rich. India's GDP at that time was among the highest, and as that British author has written, 25% of global trade was contributed by India. But to what end? Sad. Don't look so sad, Bharat. There are a lot of silver linings. So coming back to the roots of Sanatana Dharma and why I don't like to call it Hinduism is I think an ancient civilization which has lived continuously without break since the days of Indus Valley till today, when you and I are communicating on Zoom, there's been continuity. And in this continuity, there has been a great common factor. And that common factor has been continuity of ideas, belief, customs, rituals, the way do things, the way do we dress up, the way we pray to our gods, the way we assemble on Navratri. And that continuity translated into Hindi is Sanatanata, eternalness. So ours is Sanatan Dharma, not religion. Religion is a very small part of our Sanatan Dharma. In Sanatan Dharma, when a child is born, we shave his head. And when we get married, we take Saptapadi. What guides us? That is our sanskar. In Sanatan Dharma, when Kumbh takes place, millions and millions of poor people who do not have enough to eat, in that shivering cold, in that common belief that ties us, 1.4 billion people, they go to Prayag to have that holy dip, thinking that they have purified themselves. It is that belief, it is that ritual of getting together, it is that 7 steps, it is all that put together that makes us Sanatan Dharmi. And it is that has continued since Harappa, Indus Valley, till today. And it is so diffuse, it is so difficult to capture in few words.
Yeah, I want to just say one thing here. Since I in the last 5 days of we started this podcast series called Decoding Navratri, and we talked to a person who is a practicing Hindu, and his point of view was heard, and then he said this is how he understands Navratri. And then came a tantric and he said, no, 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 that's not how it is. And then he said something else. And then came a yogi who comes from the fourth generation of the oldest yoga school in India, in South India. And he says, no, 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 that's not how it is. This is how it is. And all of them, even though have the same root story, and I had this moment of losing my mind just on the fifth day, where and then there was an advanced meditation teacher who had a different point of view. So I had this moment where I really looked down on the camera and I said to that person, the fifth person, that I don't think anybody can understand this. It's not to be understood and it's too vast to be understood. And I understood that in 5 days of having podcast. But sir, before we move on to the core subject, which is Navratri, and to today's topic, I want to ask one more question just for the hunger of curiosity which is burning in me right now, right? Which is, and I think I'm at the right place and I'm asking this question to the right person also, from a history point of view. I've always had this itch of a question that, according to me, civilization should evolve in a linear way, according to me, if the species is the same. So, if in 2000, okay, it's wrong to say in 2000 years, but in the last few thousand years, we've discovered electricity. In the last 100 years, everything has changed. In terms of just after electricity, boom, everything changed. And then when I put in perspective of the little I have read about our Puranas and Vedas, and then our Vedas having such vast knowledge, where some Vedas actually talks about incredible things like Anu, or it talks about atoms, or it talks about how Earth is the center, sorry, Sun is the center, and then there are planets around it, and we have names for these different planets, even though we call it astrology. And we have mathematics, Aryabhatta gave zero. It just baffles me that with a civilization which is so vast and so profound in its knowledge, we have representations where there are flying vehicles, and then there are magic arrows with fire. What is your, from a historic point of view, what is your take on this? Is it fantasy stories, or could we would we have been a civilization? Is it possible that we were a civilization which were more than what meets the eye? We might have been much more than what meets the eye in terms of electricity, or I don't know.
Okay, so I'll be careful in answering that. Bharat, my entire study, my discussions, and my search and research, I confine to one basic guiding principle. And that is, whatever can be demonstrated by available evidences. I like to discuss and talk about those things. I am not suggesting, say, for example, that there are people who have this power that through mantra or through, in Buddhism, in various other ways, make things happen, make object move. I'm not saying it can happen. I'm not saying it cannot happen. I'm only saying that is not my field. I have not gone there. I have gone to other fields, and those fields are in India in the past. Were we highly advanced civilization? Did we have knowledge of advanced maths? Did we have? I'll just give you an example. So I had decided to write in very great detail about Ashwamedh Yagya. You must have heard of Ashwamedh Yagya. Now, a lot of people know about Ashwamedh Yagya because of Mahabharata serial and Ramayana serial and other things. So when I was writing my first book, which took me 7.5 years, and it took me about 400 books and journals and monographs to read. So I wanted to write one full chapter only on Ashwamedh Yagya, or let's say on those Yagya. You can call them Som Yagya, all right. Ashwamedh Yagya is type of Som Yagya. Anyway. So I went to several libraries in Pune, this, that, and other, and I spoke to Indologists, I spoke to people and studied. As I've told you, I have done 2 masters in engineering. And higher applied maths was one of my favorite subjects. It was favorite because it is easy. I mean, you can score easily. So when you are a student, you don't want to study too much and you want to score more. So higher applied maths, you don't work very hard and you can score more. So anyway, so the reason was different. Coming back to the main thing. So when I started studying about Ashwamedh Yagya, to make preparation for its Vedi. You know what is Vedi? Vedi is the place where today we do Yagya, Puja, Havan. You know that small place where we put bricks and then Panditji tells us he put some fire sticks in that. That is called Vedi. The Vedi of Ashwamedh and its preparations used to take 1 year. Now, Ashwamedh was not a yagya which you or I could have performed. It was performed only by super rich, usually by the rulers. A king would decide to conduct Ashwamedh yagya, and then he would leave a horse, and wherever the horse went, if anyone challenged it, there would be a war, and that guy would have to subjugate. You understand? That was the whole concept.
Right, right.
So only kings could fight that. They had huge human and financial resources. It took them 1 year to make preparation, And the Vedi, Yajna used to be 70 feet plus long, 50 feet plus wide, and it had so many details where what will be kept, how many small huts had to be made in that. Each one, it is prescribed, had to be at an angle relative to due east. Please hear me out. And then they would tell you that, okay, so this animal was to be sacrificed. He had to be tied to a yupa. That thing is called yup, to which he is tied. Where it had to be located exactly at what angle, at what height, and its relative angle to the
My God,
place
it's
where the
blowing my
priest
mind.
would
Okay.
be sitting, which would be measured by use of trigonometry. Are you understanding what I'm saying?
My God, it's blowing my mind. Okay.
So trigonometry was invented not for development of science. It was concept of sine and cosine was invented in order to make that Vedi perfectly, my friend. One of the greatest Indologists of our time, Professor Dr. Thitte, and we are all very lucky and fortunate that he is alive today. He is one of the rare persons, an Indologist, who during his lifetime, there have been workshops on him in Princeton and other universities. He is a man of that repute. So I had gone to him, to Bhandarkar, to understand something more about it. He has written 3 volumes on it. And being a student of applied math, I used my factory computer to draw that CAD CAM with relative places. You must see it. So the development of science and maths and how to measure time correctly, at what time to say what, recite which mantra, at what time to get up in the morning to start the proceedings. So that means measurement of time, accurate measurement of time. And we are talking about which period? We are talking about Rig Vedic period. Among Vedas, the oldest Veda is Rig, as you must be knowing. So we are talking about what? 3,000 years back? So 3,000 years back, those people, instead of sitting under the tree and contemplating from where we will bring our next meal, they were sitting and debating how to measure accurately cos theta so that Yupa can. So if it was not evolved society and civilization, what was?
Can I share a thought with you here on the podcast? I would like to take your permission to do it because you're very, 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 very educated and well read in this. So I don't know. I would humbly like to just share a thought because I would love to share this on a podcast as well. Actually, many years ago, I think close to 10 years ago, I had bought a book which is a translation of Rig Veda. And back then I was not really into, like today I meditate every day, and I would consider myself as somebody who's spiritual, who believes in the spirit and that sort of a person. 10 years ago, that was not the case at all. So I came across this book on Hinduism where there was word by word translation. Yeah. Sure, sir. Yeah. Pavitran, get the sandwich. So there was a word by word translation of the book, of the verses in Rig Veda. So this is 10 years ago. I was just lying at home and I was just flipping through the pages. So this one line caught my attention. This was under the chapter Ka. Now I don't remember which one it is. I think it was the first or second chapter. But I remember this much discreetly, that it talked about the beginning of life on earth. So there was this one line where it talked that how did life start on earth? Now, I'm somebody who loved back then and even today pattern breaking. So there are many pattern breaking competitions and puzzles and all of that. Numbers, different kinds of numbers. So I enjoy pattern breaking. I love doing it. So this sentence said in Rig Veda, and I would put this up in a description in the YouTube channel, that life on earth started with 3-part, like this was not Sanskrit, but this was the word by word translation of Sanskrit. 3-part abundance, heaven, and 1-part abundance, earth. It said that. So it just tore my mind apart because I was like, that doesn't make any kind of sense. But back then, I was only 19 years old. I looked at it from a pattern breaking point of view because I really loved doing it. So I was obsessed about it. So in fact, I was into Vedic maths that time. I was trying to figure out formulas. I was doing a lot of those things that time. So I spent next 2 months, not 2 months, I think 1.5 months, trying to figure out different patterns that meet this thing that is given out. And in the end, it is quite simple. That's why I said you're very well written. I mean, you're on this. So what I'm saying is, it has no evidence or anything, but I'm just saying it out because it's something I came across in my life. So when I thought about it, 3 times abundance, heaven, and heaven is space, right? I mean, that is, from a scientific point of view, it's space. And the element which is the most abundant in space is hydrogen. And 1-part abundant earth. And the element which is the most abundant on earth is nitrogen. So which is NH3, which is ammonia. Which is actually how life started on earth. It is actually the ammonia reactions which started the first single cellular organism, which eventually led to life. This is not evidence-based or scientific, but I'm just saying that. So when I came across this 10 years ago, that this line, which in this context in Rig Veda, which talked about life starting on earth, and it very accurately said 3-part abundant heaven, 1-part abundant earth, NH3, ammonia, and today mainstream science says that it's ammonia. That's when my curiosity jumped up and into this, that maybe this is not just a religion. Maybe there is so much more than we can imagine, which is going on here, which is lost in history.
You see, when we talk of Hinduism as a religion, we are making something which is this big, we are trying to make it this small.
Yeah.
Religion, in the sense it is defined by Westerners or rest of the world, every religion has to have a book. Every religion, there has to be a commitment that you believe in everything that is written in the book, etc. So there are 4 or 5 such things. Now, here, there is nowhere in Rig Veda, forget about Rig Veda, in any book, in any scripture, it is not demanded that you do this, only then you will be a Hindu. If you don't do this, you will not be a Hindu. Nowhere. So it is, I have tried to define, and I think it is one of the most appropriate definition, that Sanatan Dharma consists of 2 words. Sanatan is the eternal, which is going on since ever, and Dharma is the righteous duty. What is the righteous course? So, if you are talking to your father, what is the righteous way to talk to your father, to behave with him? If you are in your office, what is your dharma? Your righteous discharge of what is expected of you, all those functions. If you are talking to your friend, what is your righteous duty to your friend, etc. So, Sanatan Dharma is sum total of how to conduct life in a righteous manner. And in that, there's a place of ritual, there's place of Durgotsav, there is place of Mahakumbh, Shirdi ke Sai Baba, fasting, Ganpati, and everything. It is sum total of all this. Even if you take away a part of it, that sum will remain sum. It's what we define infinite in maths, which is also defined in one of our Upanishads. What is Purna? What is complete? Purna is that from which if you take anything or you add anything to it, it remains same. That is identical to the definition of infinity, which we are taught in higher maths. What is infinity? You take anything to it, you add anything to it, you subtract anything, it remains infinity. That is our concept of infinite, Anant. That is our God, super consciousness. But that is also our Sanatan Dharma. Look at the beauty. There are no restrictive practices. There's complete freedom to each and every individual to think independently, to seek his own path, and to seek his own freedom. And yet, we all come together willingly. When it is Navratri, we celebrate with great joy. But if someone was to say that Navratri is Hinduism, no. Navratri is also Hinduism. And this concept of Sanatanata is very important for us to see. And this is what distinguishes us from rest of the world religions, because they are religions. We are dharma. Dharma is the righteous course.
Sir, can I add a thought also, with your permission? Yeah. Can I add a thought? 2 days ago, I told I was taking this podcast with this person, the oldest yoga school. This person interpreted the definition of dharma in a different way. He said that dharma is also the natural state of things, the natural state. So maybe Sanatan Dharma also could be interpreted as the natural way of life. Yeah, yeah.
You have said it, Bharat. You have said it.
Yeah,
This
yeah.
is this is a very good example. What is dharma? You tell me. What is dharma of Agni? To burn. What is dharma of Jal? To wet, to flow, to always flow down. So where is the contradiction?
Right.
The problem only
Right.
arises when we try and say, no, it is only this. That is the only problem. When we try to confine infinite into something finite. No, no, no. This is infinite. This great religion, this great concept is timeless, it is infinite. It has always been there, it will always be there. Ever since human being was there or not, the concept of what is the right course has always been there.
Wow. So, uh, I'm sorry I took such a long detour, but I would.
Why you are sorry?
Wo-
I'm so happy we are talking about something so important on such an auspicious day.
so, what is your view on Navratri then? Let's come back to that. Yeah.
There are two things. It's not important what is my view. Uh, there are some hard facts that we must know uh, and that we must discuss today. Because after all, that is why you and I are talking. And when we talk of something like this, purely as scholars, not as bhakt, purely as scholars, purely as theologians, and the two things do not mean that because you are one, so you don't have respect. No, no, it doesn't mean that at all. So, what is very important, and I'd like to have this talk about Navratri in a little different manner than many people would like to talk about it. So, and you have to bear with me. So, what is very important? What when we say what is Navratri? So we have said Navratri or Durga Puja or Durgotsav as it was originally known, etc., etc. Having covered that, the single most important thing is when it started. You know, the beauty of Hinduism is, as you know, there was Rig Veda, and as we all know, Vedic culture was all about yajna. It was yajna centric. Vedic devtas, if I was to ask you, or if you were to ask someone to name 5 Vedic devtas, a rare person will be able to name any 5. He may name one or two, Indra, yes, Varun, maybe, but 5 will become a tall call.
Oh.
You name 5 Vedic devtas?
So I was struck that there were different devtas in those times. I didn't know that itself.
So this is another beauty. So
So what were those five? I would just like to know. What were those five?
what was?
What
What
were
were
those
those
five?
five?
Which
Oh, they were
five
not
deities?
five. They were, I'm saying, of the total Devi Devatas in Vedic period, even most of us don't know names of even five.
Oh.
They're all laid by the side of the road in our journey. This is another beauty of Sanatan Dharma, that we keep changing. We are not a static religion. And that is why we have survived. Because we have changed with time. We have changed as we have evolved. We have changed as situation, social condition, and political conditions change. And this is the strength of Sanatan Dharma.
So what could you?
What are Smritis? You must have heard of Manu Smriti and Yajnavalak Smriti and so many Devala Smriti and all that. Why they were written? Devala Smriti was written when Arabs for the first time came and conquered Sindh, and lot of Hindus were captured, they were made slaves, and their religion was changed. Their religion was changed not necessarily forcibly, which it was, but also because if a Muslim forcibly took away a Hindu female as a slave, he slept with her. Now, according to Hindu religion, she became polluted. She was no more a Hindu. So, a lot of Hindus, they became ashuddh. They were forced to eat meat, and they ceased to be Hindus. So, Devala Smriti was written, a Shuddhi movement to bring them back into the fold. So, Smritis were written from time to time to make correction. This is just one example that I'm giving you of one Smriti. There are many Smritis. From time to time, the life changed, social situation changed, and our duties change. And the sages, they wrote Smritis that now what is your duty? What is your ideal role? What is the righteous course? So that is what Smritis are. This is the most wonderful part of Sanatan Dharma. Keeping continuity without losing essence. I don't want to take name of some other religions, but they became moribund because what was written few hundred years back, not a word can be changed. It is written on tablet of stone. Not so in Sanatan Dharma. So, coming back to how it all started, so then Navratri or Durga Ma, they all arrived around 400-500 years BC. Before that, there were Vedic gods and goddesses.
Could you name a few just for curiosity? I'm sure all the people who are watching this podcast would love to know.
Okay. So, as I said, Varun, Ashwin. Now, each one of them has been described in very great detail, and they had their own vehicle. Say, for example, Ashwin were the twins. Varun, commonly these days, is considered god of air, but
Hmm.
so in Vedic period, it was all about yajna. You performed yajna, you invited those gods, you offered them oblation of ghee, jaw, shahad, meat, all those things which you liked yourself. Naturally, you thought that super humans will also like the same thing. If some guest comes to your house, you offer what is best in your house. So that was the whole concept, basic concept. And at that time, yajna was quite portable. So you could make a Vedi anywhere. Ashwamedh yajna and other things were not there till that time. And the first Ved which was written was the Rig Veda. And that was also written over a period of time. So 10th mandal of, there are total 10 mandals in Rig Veda. And that mandal was written much later. How we know that it was written much later? The language, the culture, the customs that are explained there. It also shows a discussion of Varan Vyavastha. Whereas if you read uh, second or fourth mandal of Rig Veda, there is no talk of Varan Vyavastha. There was no caste system as that.
And when was that? When was that the first one written?
So it started appearing in 10th mandal of Rig Veda.
Which is when? Which is which year? I mean, if we know.
Okay, I mean, it would be roughly 1500 BC.
And when was the first one written? Probably much before that.
It is indeterminate, but because we can't determine exactly when, so we say 1500 years BC or before. So it could be 3000 years before or 4000 years before or like that. Hmm? So, insofar as Durga is concerned, uh, there is Tetriya Aranyak. There is a Tetriya Sangita and there is a Tetriya Aranyak. You know, Ved had four parts. So one was Sangita, which had mantra. Then the second was Brahmana. Brahmana was directory of uh, rituals, how to do what. And the third one was Aranyak. Aranyak was the esoteric meaning of those mantras, as you were telling about 1:3 ratio and other things. So for the study of that, people were supposed to go out of the village and study in solitude in jungles. So Aranyaks came third, and then came Upanishads, the last. So each Ved has these four elements, and there are four Veds as you. So the first that we hear of Shiv and Uma being consort of Shiv, is I think in Taittiriya Aranyak, which would be about 500 BC, roughly. 100 years here or there. You know, the problem with our uh, text is that our sages didn't bother about time. I mean, for them, time meant nothing. So with the result, there was no tradition of writing history. That's a serious setback. But anyway, that's another topic we'll talk some other day. So, so talking about Navratri or Durga Puja. So that is the period we are talking about. Now, this Shaktism, puja of Shakti, there are signs that Shakti puja became popular around immediately after birth of Christ, I would say. But it had become quite popular and flourished in Gupta period. Now, Gupta period was a period of revival of Hinduism, as you know. So, uh, during that period, about 300 years after the Christ, up to 600 years, 700 years of the Christ, that was the Gupta period, the golden period. So, that time, Shaktism really took off. Now, Shaktism means Shakti Puja. And initially, of course, it was centered around Kamrup, Bengal, and Bihar. But as all things happen with Sanatan Dharma, it gradually spread all across. Hmm? Then in Mahabharata, you learn quite a lot about Shakti Puja and Durga and other things. So, as you can see, the timeline. Now, Mahabharata was not written at one go at one time, or at least not in the form that we have inherited it. So, it's very difficult to say which parv was written later on or was added later on, and which parv was written earlier. So, those questions will remain.
Because Ved Vyas is the person who wrote it, and the common tradition says that. Okay.
But as I said at some point of our discussion, uh, right now we are not talking about what tradition says. Right now we are talking generally. I mean, if you were to ask me, where is the evidence? So historical evidence may not be there, but this is what our tradition says.
Right.
And so that was the beginning of Durga Puja. Hmm. And from beginning, Durgotsav, as it used to be called, वो एक ही दफा साल में होता था. अब तो दुर्गा पूजा साल में 2 दफा भी हो सकती है, as you must be knowing. So at that time it was first अश्विन में होता था. शरदोत्सव, शरद में, शरद ऋतु अश्विन में होता. अब तो शरद ऋतु में भी होता है और साल में एक दफा और हो सकता है, चैत्र में, इफ आई एम नॉट मिस्टेकन. एसेंशियली देवी के 9 रूप अभी देवी के 9 रूप पर मुझे एक बात बहुत अच्छी याद आई। और ये सब चीजें तो हर किताब में अवेलेबल है, सब लोग पढ़ ही सकते हैं कि क्या क्या रूप हैं उनके, कौन से देवी किन किन 9 रूप में पूजा होती है। एक मेरे बड़े प्रिय, बहुत पढ़े लिखे, बहुत विद्वान है, बहुत वरिष्ठ अधिकारी थे भारत सरकार में, तो मेरे हॉस्टल में ही थे, मुझसे बहुत सीनियर। यू नो हाउ दीज थिंग्स हैपन। Once he was given some major assignment by the central government, which took him about 2 years to complete. And when it got completed, he was sitting in his office, having finished the task. He shut the file and he was sitting and looking outside his office window. And he picked up the pencil and he started scribbling something on paper. And then he realized it was a poetry. That the first time in his life, at the age of 55, that he realized he could write poetry. अब वो घर गए तो इतने जोश में कि उन्होंने लिखना शुरू करा। एंड व्हाट ही डिड, ही ट्रांसलेटेड एंटायर गीता इनटू वर्स। गीता का अनुवाद करना ही मुश्किल है, इतनी मुश्किल चीज है, इतना टफ सब्जेक्ट है। ही ट्रांसलेटेड गीता फ्रॉम संस्कृत इनटू हिंदी वर्स in 30 days. Have you heard of such a thing?
What's his name?
His name is Mr. R.U. Singh.
Are you?
Singh. Mr. Ram Upadesh Singh.
And that book is available on.
Of course, I got it published. There's another. जब उन्होंने मुझे बताया तो अच्छा, वो मेरे हॉस्टल के हैं और हम लोग के हॉस्टल की टाइज बड़ी स्ट्रांग है, मुझसे सीनियर थे नेचुरली। तो कुछ मुझे बताने लगे कि देखो वो मैंने वो लिखी है कविता, 26 जनवरी पर एक कविता लिख के भेजी थी। मैंने कहा सर आप इतने अच्छे पोइट हैं। बोले मैंने तो गीता का भी अनुवाद किया है। मैंने कहा क्या बात कर रहे हैं? तो ही सेड यस। आई सेड सेंड इट टू मी, व्हिच ही डिड। तो मैंने कहा हैव यू गॉट इट पब्लिश्ड? बोले नहीं। मैंने कहा क्या बात कर रहे हैं आप? बोले किससे पब्लिश कर रहे हैं, अब तो रिटायर हो गए। आई गॉट इट पब्लिश बाय माय ओन पब्लिशर। कैन यू इमेजिन? देयर आर सच पीपल। So, why I'm talking about him? 15 minutes before this podcast, he sent me another poetry on Navratri.
Wow.
And it's a very small poetry. I'll read it out to you. And it is so beautiful, so nice. And as he said कि बस उठ के बैठे और पेन उठाया और लिखना शुरू कर दिया। Just bear with me for a minute.
No problem, sir.
Yeah. So here you are. चंडिकायन के कवच पद्य से उद्धृत श्री मार्कंडेय जी ने कहा, जो सर्वलोक में परम गृह साधन है, जो सर्व प्राणियों का कर्ता रक्षण है, जिसको न किसी से किया प्रकट प्रपितामह, मुझको अब बतलाएं कृपया साधन वह है। श्री ब्रह्मा जी ने कहा, जो रहा गुहतम परम तत्व का धारी, संपूर्ण प्राणियों का है जो उपकारी, है कवच देविका, सुनिएगा, है कवच देविका, मात्र एक साधन वह। हे महामुनि अब सुनो उसे पावन वह प्रथम शैलपुत्री जानी जाती है, दूसरी ब्रह्मचारिणी कही जाती है, तीसरी चंद्र घंटा सुनाम धाता है, धर नाम कुसुम धर नाम कुष्मांडा चौथी माता है, पांचवी देवी का नाम स्कंद माता है, छठवीं को कात्यायनी कहा जाता है, सप्तम तो काल रात्रि मानी जाती हैं, आठवीं महागौरी जानी जाती हैं, नौवीं को कहते लोग सिद्धिदात्री हैं, माँ दुर्गा इन 9 नामों की धात्री हैं, इन पृथक तक नामों से हैं उद्भासित, यूं परम पिता ब्रह्मा द्वारा प्रतिपादित। ये उन्होंने 9 देवियों के लिए, तो ये होंगे 85 साल के, और इतना स्नेह है इनका।
Sir, but I want to ask you कि since yesterday we talked about Skanda Mata, and the person who came on the podcast yesterday talked about how Skanda Mata is a motherly figure who's a guiding force. And the general idea till now has been that Shailaputri is taking the strength or the energy within a person to take up a goal. Then Brahmacharini is avoiding distractions. Then there's an interpretation that Chandra Ghanta is the story, as per the story, is straying away negative thoughts on the path. And then we had the interpretation by somebody else that Kushmanda is the Devi, the form of Prana Shakti or energy. And all of these have been, that's why I said there's a central thread also, because the next one after that is the one we did yesterday, which was Skandamata, which this person was a tantric who came yesterday. So he said it's a guiding force, the motherly figure. So apart from the point of views that they shared, like including yours, all the 6 point of views about Navratri have been very different and very vast. But the central thread that pulls of the definition of these forms have been more or less the same. So what do you think about today's form, which is Katyayani?
तो कात्यायनी का तो जैसा सर्वविदित है, कात्यायनी स्वरूप में तो वो प्रचंड स्वरूप है. सो अकॉर्डिंग टू मार्कंडे पुराण, तो जब सब त्रसित हो गए देवी देवता महिषासुर के अन्याय से, और ऋषि मुनि लोगों का जीना रहना मुश्किल हो गया, तो उन्होंने भगवान से जाके कहा कि भगवान अब बचाइए, ये तो इट इज it is at one level what we are taught in science, nova and supernova, the birth and death of a star, the cycle of creation. When things reach extreme, then the destruction takes place and the cycle of creation again begins. So जब इतना बैलेंस हो रहा है चीज में, so this signifies to my mind the sages are going. Now, who are sages? They are दे आर द पीपल हु आर मोस्ट न्यूट्रल, जिनके ऊपर असर नहीं होता चीजों का। अगर वो भी पीड़ित हो गए हैं, वो भी त्रसित हो गए हैं, and if they are going and appealing, that means the balance of things has really gone wrong. That is how I read. And so when they go और वो कहते हैं हे भगवान अब हमें इतना कष्ट है, so then विष्णु, अग्नि, शंकर and a team of our devatas are sent by परमात्मा कि जाओ, और उनके तेजस से फिर उत्पन्न हुई to bring the balance. In that violent form, that Devi who could then quell it all. Mahishasur being representative of all that was wrong, all that was adharma, all that was imbalance, all that was unnatural. And if that balance had to be brought, then only through Shakti it could be brought. And that Shakti manifested itself from the Tejas of Vishnu, Shankar, Agni, and all Devis and Devatas. And from Shankar she got the trident, and from Vishnu she got the discus.
Oh, she's a form with the trident and the Sudarshan chakra. Oh my God. Oh, all right. All powerful.
And then she went ahead and destroyed the evil, the imbalance, what was unnatural, what was disturbing the very balance of this creation, which is Mahishasur. But even in that form, she is most loving. देखो एक बात बताता हूँ, ये बड़ी इंपॉर्टेंट पार्ट है, सब लोग इसके बारे में बात करते हैं कि हम लोग के यहाँ जो पूजा होती है वो दो तरह की होती है। एक तो होती है काम्य, हिंदी का शब्द होता है ना काम्य। काम्य मीन्स विद डिजायर, कि आपकी मेरे पुत्र की लंबी आयु हो जाए, या मेरे पिता स्वस्थ हो जाए, और वॉट एवर। सो देयर सम काम, सम डिजायर, और आपने उससे देवी की पूजा करी या देवता की पूजा करी। और एक होती है नित्य, कि आपको करना ही है देवी, डिजायर हो या ना हो, नहीं, वो धर्म है, राइटियस। आर यू अंडरस्टैंडिंग? नाउ वी गो बैक टू द राइटियस थिंग। तो जो वो धर्म है नित्य कर्म का, तो दुर्गा पूजा, दुर्गा की पूजा नित्य है। ये नहीं है कि साल में खाली एक दफा की जाए। इट इज प्रिस्क्राइब्ड कि आपको रोज करना है, और इस उत्सव के समय तो अवश्य करिए। So this Utsav, not from today, but from 600 AD onwards, it is being celebrated like this, more like a social function, but also as puja. So it is sum total of puja and social function. और बहुत बड़ी चीज है इसमें, दो बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट चीज है. तो एक तो ये हुआ कि कात्यायनी और उनका स्वरूप. तो कात्यायनी शक्ति का वो रूप है जिसमें वो सबसे बड़े अधर्म का नाश करती है अपनी अपार शक्ति से. एंड दैट अपार शक्ति got reinforced by powers of Vishnu and Mahesh and others. Now, this in itself, I am getting goosebumps talking like this. क्या कॉन्सेप्ट है कि अगर अधर्म हो रहा है, if adharma is getting upper hand, then the god herself will come to strike the balance. तो वो 9 days का, जैसा मैंने कहा, देखिए है तो ये नैतिक नित्य पूजा अभी की जा रही है. सो इट इज अ कंबाइंड सेलिब्रेशन in the form of congregation, but it has to be done every day. दुर्गा की पूजा तो नित्य है और इसके लाभ भी दिए गए हैं. तो उसके लाभ, जो 3 लाभ दिए गए हैं, उनमें से एक है बड़ा इंपॉर्टेंट. शत्रुओं का निवारण. Now this, I've kept this beautiful murti of on my study table, गणपति मेरे सामने रहती है. तो जो मार्कंडेय पुराण में भी ये जो चीज है, इट इज डेल्ट विद. पर देखिए, तो 3 चीज हो गई. एक तो ये कि पूजा हमें नित्य करनी है. एक बड़ा अवसर हो गया जब देयर इज अ कॉन्ग्रीगेशन, इट इज सोशल फंक्शन एज वेल एज रिलीजियस फंक्शन. और एक मेन इसका ये हो गया कि शत्रु का निवारण. दूसरा इसमें इंपॉर्टेंट है धन धान्य. धन धान्य मीन्स वेल्थ. अब बिना धन धान्य के, बिना कंफर्ट के, बिना एवरीडे लाइफ में अगर यही अटके रह गए कि क्या खाएंगे क्या पिएंगे, तो शांति तो नहीं मिल सकती. तो ये एक और इंपॉर्टेंट हुआ है. जो सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट इसका मुझे पार्ट लगता है, वो है, इट सेज महासिद्धि प्रसादम. कि ये पूजा करने से आपको महासिद्धि प्रसाद मिल रहा है. तो ये 3 इसके मेन इस पूजा का वो है. The most remarkable thing about this puja कि हिंदू स्क्रिप्चर्स में कहा गया है कि इस पूजा में, मैं आज की बात नहीं कर रहा हूं, मैं उस समय की कर रहा हूं जब जाति प्रथा वगैरह बड़ी वो थी, कि इन दिस पूजा all four varna, that means Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, could participate. Not only चारों वर्ण वाले, बल्कि पांचवें जो वर्ण के बाहर के होते थे, जिनको चांडाल कहा जाता था या म्लेच्छ कहा जाता था, even they were permitted to perform this. So this puja is very different from other pujas. नवरात्रि की तो हम लोगों ने मेरे ख्याल से जो 3 इंपॉर्टेंट पॉइंट थे वो कवर कर लिया कि शुरुआत कैसे हुई,
राइट,
वैदिक पीरियड के बाद से कैसे शिव और उमा का, देखो भाई अगर इसमें देखो तो मेरे ख्याल से पहला जो वर्णन आता है वो तो आता है शिव और अंबिका तो भाई बहन थे, फिर आता है शिव और अंबिका एज हस्बैंड वाइफ, फिर आता है शिव और उमा एज हर पत्नी, और फिर आता है ये शाक्तिज्म which comes in after Christ period and which flourishes during the period of Guptas, and thereafter it only grows and grows and grows.
सो शिव और अंबिका भाई बहन थे, उसके बाद फिर वो वाइफ का आया.
We have to be very careful about these things. I was hesitating in mentioning it. कई इस तरह के कॉन्ट्रडिक्शंस वैदिक पीरियड के साहित्य में मिलते हैं. तो it is difficult to understand कि what caused it. Was it poor record keeping or what? So I am in no position to comment. पर यह तय है कि शिव और पार्वती जहां से शक्तिज्म फिर निकला है, तो वो तो रिलेटिवली बीसी के आसपास का ही फिनोमेना है. और इसका फ्लोरिशिंग जो हुई बहुत जब वो हुआ, दैट वाज ड्यूरिंग द टाइम. और इसके मैंने आपको बता दिया कि 3 क्या एम थे, अबाउट नित्य और काम्य का भी भेद बता दिया. बल्कि ये भी कहा गया था कि अगर जो नृत्य नहीं करेगा, स्ट्रॉन्ग वर्ड्स आर यूज्ड कि stupid and lazy and other things, and then he had to make amends for not doing it every day. तो ये सब भी है. तो बड़ा इंपॉर्टेंट इवेंट है, बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है. पर जो इसकी सबसे, कमिंग बैक टू हाउ वी स्टार्टेड, कि जो हिंदुइज्म में कंटिन्यूटी भी है और प्रिजर्वेशन ऑफ एंशिएंट चीज भी है, इफ वी टॉक ऑफ दैट, सो दिस इज द क्लासिकल एग्जाम्पल. कि आप देखिए कि वर्ण व्यवस्था जो इतनी रिजिड थी, इट ट्रांसेंड्स दैट. ये जरूर समझेगी कि नहीं नहीं, इसको तो वर्ण व्यवस्था को तोड़ के आगे जाना है. प्रिस्क्राइब कर दिया, टेक्स्ट बुक्स में प्रिस्क्राइब किया गया है. ऐसा मेरे कहने से नहीं हो रहा है, ऐसा टेक्स्ट में प्रिस्क्राइब किया गया है. इसमें तो चारों वर्ण के लोग कर सकते हैं, अनार्य भी कर सकते हैं, शक भी कर सकते हैं, और म्लेच्छ भी कर सकते हैं इसमें पार्टिसिपेट. तो इसको तो इतना यूनिवर्सल बना दिया गया. तो एक बहुत बड़ा सोशल मूवमेंट भी हो गया ना ये, जिसमें पूरी सोसाइटी पार्टिसिपेट कर रही है, किसी को अलग नहीं छोड़ा जा रहा है. और तीन सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट चीजें दी हुई हर एक को दी जा रही हैं।
Hmm.
और ऐसी देवी की पूजा की जा रही है कात्यायनी की, विच इज personified evil as evil destroyer। तो ये सोचिए कि सोसाइटी के लिए कितनी अपलिफ्टिंग चीज है।
Right. Right. Wow. Thank you so much, sir. I have no words to say anything. So usually I have a very long speech about thank you so much because you contributed a point of view in terms of which is fresh, but I have nothing to say because it is so deep. You took it so deep. I cannot imagine you took it that deep. Sir, this is a open invitation for a podcast after this. I want a podcast with you after this. I want
Whenever
one more podcast.
I'll be happy.